and a ton of questions. So, hi, Vanessa. Thank you for coming. Thank you for joining us. Feel free to say hello in the chat. I get your messages and get started in 2 more minutes to get folks going. Give it 1 more minute now. Hi, Lynn. All right. Thank you for joining. Great. Get started. All right, well, people will trickle in over time. And if people join, then they join. If not, then it is what it is. But we have a lot of questions, and I want to try to get through as many as possible. If you submitted a question, I'm going to do it in the order that they came in. So starting from the top to the bottom, we had over 100 RSVPs. So I'll try to answer as many as I can. Just to level set with you all, my name is Kenneth Mejia. I'm the city controller, so the city's accountant and auditor. And I do these typical town halls every now and then, talk about the city's budget and the finances. In particular, the city's budget and finances, because in a week, the mayor's proposed budget is gonna drop on Monday, April 20. And so this is the perfect time for you all to just get involved right now. Talk to your council members, let them know where you want your money to be spent. Because, yeah, once it gets dropped, you will have to advocate through your council member as to where you want that money to be spent. And when it drops, we will be giving you all, of course, transparency on where the money is going and also where it's not going, right? So we'll do our best to do that. So hey, Andrew, if you all don't know, the city's budget right now, total budget is over $14 billion. And I could just show you what it looks like by sending by showing our budget app, so you all are aware. And let me just share that real quick with you all, so you all could see my screen. Okay, application windows. Let me share this real quick. All right. Okay. So you could all see my screen. This is the city's current fiscal year budget. And so it's important that you all know where it's going to go. And we did it by largest to smallest, so you guys could get an idea on where the funds are being budgeted for this fiscal year. And usually for every fiscal year, it sort of matches the same amount. So at the very top, you have police at 3.3 billion. You have other special purpose funds. These are restricted funds that the city has. There's a lot of special funds as well that are in this little one here. You can see how much fire gets. You can see how much sanitation gets. But I'll share this in the chat, because one of the things that you guys could do too is you can actually click into it, because a lot of people always ask me, hey, what really goes into the budget, right? So if you were curious to know what actually went into this $3.3 billion for police, you could click on it and it will actually show you a description of the department, and it'll tell you the breakdown by largest to smallest. So over half of it is salaries, close to 18% is pensions and retirement, and HR benefits is 13%. So if you add these three up together, these are like more so related to payroll and benefits. That gets you already close to like 2.8 billion, 2.9 billion just related on payroll. So you could do the same thing if you wanted to as well. You could go back or you could filter for any department. For example, if you were curious about any other department, you could click the drop down. If you wanted, let's do animal services, for example. If you go to animal services, you could see that the majority or the chunk of their thing is half of it is payroll, 17% is pensions and retirement, human resources, 15%. You could see that. You could also see as well, if you scroll down on the department, you could see what most of the programs make up that department. You could see that 44% of animal services, the departmental budget is for shelter operations and animal care. You could see that only 19% relates to animal control or enforcement, 15% relates to medical services, 10% relates to community engagement, and so on and so forth. So I share this with you all because you all can play with this on your own, and you can see where the current budget is, or and play with it, because I think you all are going to need to advocate for where you want the money to be spent when the budget drops next Monday. So please play with this website. I will post it again in the chat if you came late. And let me just put it in the chat one more time, just so you all are aware. Okay, so I posted it again in the chat. Hopefully you play with it. So what I want to do is, now that you know the budget's dropping, the way it works is once it drops on Monday, April 20, the Budget and Finance Committee will basically be in charge. It is consisting of members from Council District 1, 3, 5, and 10 and 15. So if you wanted to make a change in the budget, the Budget and Finance Committee is your first place to go once it drops on Monday, next Monday. So I'll say who they are in case you wanted to lobby your elected officials in the Budget and Finance Committee. So it's CD1, CD3, CD5, CD10, and CD15. So those are the Budget and Finance Committee members. So you'll probably have a month, and then it goes to the full city council, but there's really not much changes once it gets to the full city council. So I would recommend that you all, get involved now, and especially if you're a constituent in one of these districts, that you could do it. Vanessa asked real quick, when are public budget hearings for departments released? So once it drops next Monday, we are gonna find out the schedule on when you all can give public comment. We'll let you all know too. And then also they're gonna do departmental budget hearings. So every department, including myself, will have to go up in front of the Budget and Finance Committee, and we have to fight for our budget. And that should be happening within like either the last week of April or first week of May. So everyone will find out soon when those will be happening. And so let me go here. And pretty much the budget needs to be approved by like the first week of June. So if you think about it, there's really not much time between April 20 and June. There's only like 40 days, right? And so that's one of the big things that we've been advocating for, is to have a 2-year budget and have a longer process in budget deliberations, because once it's sort of released, it's mostly like baked, and there rarely are any changes about what's going to happen. So, okay, let us start answering with some of these questions. But if anyone else had a question in terms of the budget process or budget calendar, feel free to ask me in the chat, and then I can respond. But let's go to the questions that we were given. So they are in the order right there. Tiger and Jerry, feel free to just chat it to me. But there's a lot of people who already submitted their questions, like over the past week. So we're gonna go through the list of all the questions that were submitted in order. But if we have time, I could get to it. But feel free to ask it on in the chat. And yeah, I could see your guys' questions, so feel free to ask. Can anyone see my video? Does anyone see my video? Is it on? Esteban just said my video is disabled. So, okay, cool. You could see me. All right. All right. Great, great, great. Okay, cool. All right. Okay, let's start off with these questions. We got over 100 RSVPs, and let's go through the first question. So the first question was from Jonathan. Jonathan G. He was the first question to ask last week. So thank you so much. Um, I will ask Jonathan. Jonathan asks, how does staffing for LAPD, LAFD, or any other department get its own numbers for staffing versus if OSHA recommends a number? I can't wrap my head if fire is short 70 to 90 fire stations per a study. How doesn't that get funding right away? Do the city get fines for not following safety for labor standards? So thank you for the question. So the question as it revolves around staffing for any department, whether it's LAPD, LAFD, or any department, is every department essentially presents their budget. Like I said, even my office presents a budget proposal. We tell the city how much staff we need, but at the end of the day, it's pretty much up to the mayor and city council to determine how many positions they want to give us, like how many more police officers, how many more firefighters, how many more accountants, right? So it's all part of the budget process, even if like there are best standard practices for recommendations to have X amount of employees for a department. It's really at the end of the day up to it's a budgetary decision. It's a so I would say that is how the city determines, right? They balance the budget and see if they could give more or less to certain departments or not. Okay, the next question is from Jerry. So Jerry, you're actually number two, the second person to ask a question. So you're actually here. So Jerry, thank you for thank you for joining. Jerry asked, how can you justify $5,000 a month for a speed camera? That's a salary. Why not just why not just hire a police officer to stand there and keep us safe? Traffic cameras are just another way to extort residents by using our own money against us. Okay, thank you for this question, Jerry. I'd actually like to show you all our latest website app that we created about the speed cameras. So if you all are not aware, the city of LA is gonna deploy 125 speed cameras, I think 125, throughout the entire city of Los Angeles. So you all could get a speeding ticket if you're within one of these speed cameras. And it is, the rationale that they put up, the departments and other officials is that it's supposed to help with speeding. And these areas were picked through council district input. There were some neighborhood council meetings. There were also some data analysis on where the accidents were happening the most and things like that. So what I want to do is I want to actually show you where these speed cameras are. These are actually public on the Department of Transportation's website. We just made it, more user friendly so you all can know where the city put them and it's more accessible to use on your mobile phone. So if you're on your desktop or your phone, you can basically filter by whatever district you want, and it'll take you to where they are. And if you zoom in more, you could see, you could click on one and it'll tell you where they're at, you know, what district and, what intersection it's at. So these will launch in late summer, and you will have 60 days for a warning period if you are caught speeding by these speed cameras. And then after the 60 days, then that's where you will see the civil speed violations. They don't count against your driving record. There's no point. It starts at $50 and then it keeps going up depending on how much you keep speeding and getting caught. So take a look at that. But as mentioned in the question by Jerry, these do cost $5,000 a month, and pretty much this, and I'll just give you guys some more information about it. But it is going to be done through a third-party contract with Vera Mobility. So you will be seeing that happen, and it's piggybacking off of a contract with another city, so the city of Oakland, and that is how we got it through them. And so the council just recently approved all the locations for it recently, and the annual cost is about 6.7 million, and it ends up being around 4,500 a month. So it is going to be a pilot program first to see how it works. But yeah, I think this is gonna, one of the ways in which the city is trying to combat speeding. And this information is not supposed to be shared with others, used against your insurance or anything. And so this is just one of the ways in which the city does it. If you wanted more police officers to be doing traffic enforcement and stops, then obviously that is a budget priority. If you wanted it to let your, elected officials know too as well. So thank you, Jerry, for that question. And so let's go to the next question. The next question is from Robert. Robert asks, is there any accountability and oversight of the millions of dollars on homelessness issue? And so, yeah, there totally is. Before we came into office, there was like no homelessness tracking done on a systemic level. And I think it was pretty wild because we are accountants, and one of the things that I did was to one of the things that I did was to reach out to my team, and we created accounting codes. If you're an accountant, you know of the chart of accounts. So we created a project code where if you book anything to homelessness, you just book it to this code. And we created that. We launched it 2 years ago. And so what I could do for you all is I could show you how to track homelessness spending using our website real quick. So let me share this with you all. I'll share this with you all too, so you all can use it yourself. So I'll put it in the chat. This is our homeless dashboard, and then I'll share my screen. And I'm sharing my screen now. Okay, and so you could see our homelessness dashboard. It has some stats here that you could check out. It's pretty high level. If you wanted to see information about homeless performance metrics and more, the homeless count every year, things like that. It's honestly like very enlightening to play with. So I would recommend you all play with it and see, some of these stats. The one thing I do want to show you is the homelessness tracker, the expense tracker. And this is actually really, really interesting. So this is what I was talking about when I was saying you can track homeless spending. So if you look here, you could see this information, and you could actually download it to Excel if you have Excel, and you can actually see like what we spent on, like who was the nonprofit, right? I have a lot of people who ask me, who are the homelessness nonprofits, right? And you could filter by non you could filter by nonprofit. You can see if it's a corporation, if it's a partnership, if it's a nonprofit, all that information. But yeah, just like, looking at it right here, you could just see so far, like, what have we paid, right? And you could filter by date, um, information like that. You could see who we paid. There's LASA. Um, you could see, what work order it related to. This one looks like it relates to People's Community Center. Um, and so this information you could then ask the department. You could ask the Community Investment for Families, which is a department. You could say, hey, I noticed we spent $30,580. What was it for? And so they could give you more details, right? Or you could say, hey, I saw 17,500 spent on Barrio Action Youth and Family Center. And you could ask, well, what was it for, right? And we created this so you all can just know like what we're spending in real time for homelessness, right? So it goes all the way back down to 2023, like some dates in 2023. So you could, feel free to play with it. Um, you could see that we're paying some hotels and motels for Inside Safe. You see we're paying sanitation department is paying 1,700 for some Clean Harbor Environmental, a vendor. So this is a great way to know what we're spending on homelessness. Now, we try to get departments to book, right? But not all the departments are always booking to the codes. And so we always ask them to as well at the end of the year to confirm their total homelessness spending based on the best of their abilities or knowledge to know. So I would play with this if you were curious about what the homelessness spending was, and then you can ask the individual departments for the support or if you had more questions on it. If you all know who Judge Carter is, one of the things he said is let the public be the auditor and put everything out there. And so I really believe in that. I really believe in letting you all be the like you all have the best power to hold the government accountable, right? Not me. I think it's you all, the people. So I put out all the information and you all could basically ask questions, right? And so use this a lot because I always get questions a lot about like where's the money going for homelessness, right? And so you literally use this, download this to Excel and then do your research as well too and start scrutinizing along with me. Um so let me see here. Lynn asks, who's Judge Carter? Judge Carter is a federal judge who's overseeing the LA Alliance case right now between the city and some business groups and more about the way the city's handling homelessness. And so, that is ongoing right now. We've been in court before to actually present our website because they wanted us to build a website and track some of this spending and whatnot. So, like I said, play with this homelessness dashboard, especially if you're really curious about homelessness. It is something that it is the biggest issue, and I think you all should play with it, and I'll post it again in the chat. Okay, let's go to the next question. The next question is from Patricia. Patricia B. Patricia asked, why do lawsuits against police have to come out of police budget? The police don't have a say in it. City attorney decided to settle because the trial takes longer and is more expensive. So thank you for that question, Patricia. So right now, the lawsuits and the settlements actually don't come out of the police department. It comes out of the general fund. So, you know, money that could have been used to repair your sidewalks or your streetlights or the animal shelters or, rec and parks. So every time there's a lawsuit or settlement or we lose, we have to pay by getting it from the general fund, which of course affects us because we all know city services are not sufficient and we are not doing a great job. And every time we have to pay out these settlements, it just takes more money away from you all to spend on for things that really matter to you. So I'll actually share a website on our liability claims dashboard. So you could actually see more information about what are making up these liabilities. So I'll put this in the chat and you all could play with it on your phone or whatever you want, whenever you're bored. And you could see that we have spent over $1.1 billion on liabilities since fiscal year 2020. So it's a lot of money. Like think about what we could have spent that on. And fortunately got spent on the city's mistakes. You could see how it is over the years, like liabilities have just kept going. We're only halfway through the fiscal year. That's why this one is low. But eventually as more months pass by, this will be higher. In addition, you could see how much are the payouts by department. So the highest of the 1.1 billion is police at 436 million, followed by street services at 208 million, and then sanitation 117, and then transportation at 97 million. If you scroll down more, you can actually see what makes up the categories by department. So, for example, the top two in police are civil rights, excessive use of force, unlawful use of force. The second highest is traffic collisions. So, like if a police car like runs over somebody or things like that. If you go down more, we know street services. This is the department that handles and maintains your sidewalks, your streets. And you can see of the 208 million, the largest by far is dangerous conditions, right? So think about like your uneven sidewalks, um, potholes, getting injured off things like that. And honestly, we don't invest enough in street services. If you go outside, you can see just how bad our infrastructure is at. And it's just, it would pay for itself if we invested more in our infrastructure. That's why we've been advocating for a capital infrastructure plan. And luckily, the city is starting to move towards that. So I think a lot of the stuff that we've been saying since day one, the city is actually like listening to us and moving towards that. Maybe because we're always sounding the alarm. So maybe they're like, here comes the controller, just telling us, what the issues are and keeps telling us what to do. And finally, they're doing it. So you're going to see some liability claims reform, hopefully. Right now, the city is looking into possibly holding, departments accountable for their liabilities. So we'll see what happens there. Because if not, then, like I said, obviously you're just going to keep paying all these lawsuits and nothing's going to change, right? Lynn asked in the chat, how can we cut down on liabilities? I think it's twofold. This is just coming from me because right now my audit team is actually doing an audit right now on what the city's doing on risk management. So I don't want to get ahead, but I know definitely if we could invest in more, especially infrastructure, and also holding departments accountable if there are, many preventable liabilities that came about. But yeah, that exactly what you said, Lynn. If we can maintain our infrastructure and repair it and enhance it so people don't get hurt, right? I think that's a way to avoid liabilities. But we're currently in the middle of an performance audit right now on the city's risk management to reduce harm and liability. So we'll keep you all posted. So I'll post this website again in the group chat just so you all can play along with it as well. Okay, so put it here. So check it out, play with it. I think it's funny how some of these questions I can answer it by showing you a website. And it's just like, yeah, like we we love making the city's finances and operations so um, accessible and easy to use for you all. We really are harnessing technology to the best of our abilities and making it easy to use. So let me ask the next question from somebody who asked. Okay, the next question asked was by Jason. Same thing. Jason E asked, "How do we get out of this budget or liabilities death spiral?" So same thing. Like I said, if there is accountability for departments who give rise to liabilities, that's one way. If we also invest in a capital infrastructure plan so we can maintain our infrastructure. That's also another way too. So yeah, so I think I answered that. The next question is by Rob. Why is there so much overtime for police and fire so they earn over $500,000? Why can't we limit overtime and punish these employees? So this is a question by Rob F. So there are some employees who make who make a lot in overtime. And actually, it's like, oh, here's another website. So I can show you a website. So let me show you a website where you actually all could find out how much everyone makes, including me. Um, we actually wanted to make it so transparent. We included everyone's name, so you could literally search my name or search anyone's name, and you could just see how much people make or get, and so let me just share my screen real quick. All right, let me share this to the group chat. So if you guys wanted to play around with our payroll explorer, you could click on that, and you can, and I'll share my screen as well, so you could see how much we pay people. Share here. Okay, so I shared with you all the payroll website. So literally, if you wanted to, you can see how much we're paying, how much we paid, and this is on the calendar year basis. You can see it. You can see how much are the highest compensated employees, highest department payroll. You could click on here if you wanted to see who are the highest paid employees, and then you can also like scroll down and you can see how much they got. 653,000 in overtime, 395,000 in overtime. I think this person may be retired, but you could see how the lighter greenish color is mostly overtime. And then some people might have had retirements, and so they got payouts. So that's different than overtime, which is the darker green. But yeah, you can just see how much overtime there is. So yeah, there are people who are making over $500,000 when you include overtime. And one of the the things that we would like to do is to provide more transparency and oversight as to what did we spend it on, right? I know for fire, they need to have their stations, staffed, like the whole day, 24 hours, right? And so for some of them, if there's some short staffing, then they have to be on the clock all the time. And so those things add up and add up. But ultimately, the overtime decisions are controlled at the, department level. And depending on department leadership and how much you could spend or not spend there's an approval, right? There's an approval by the departments to say, okay, you're approved to work this much or not much. And what we see with overtime is we tend to go over budget, and that is a huge issue because once you go over budget, you actually have to um, find out where you could get the money from somewhere else, right? And so if there was more, say, or at least just more transparency on what this overtime was for, I think that's definitely an area to spotlight, right? But that's some of the reasons why it is. That's some of the reasons why uh, some people make 500,000, and from what I know and who I talk to is that you have to get approval, right? Usually from your department heads and your supervisor to work all that much. And depending on the department, right? Sometimes you just have to like you're on something where you have to work overtime and you can't leave, right? So you just have to do it. Um, but yeah, it's unsustainable, definitely. Hopefully, everyone wants more staff. And if they get more staff, then the rationale is you have more staff, then you have less for overtime. So we'll see how that really plays out in truth, right? Because we do see budget increases for especially the larger departments. And I guess it's like, are you hiring more? We gave you all this money. Are you seeing overtime go down? And are you analyzing it to, to see if we could cut down on overtime? So, but the city's huge. There's 50,000 employees, and so it's so big. It's like so large to provide enough proactive oversight on overtime. But yeah, you all can play with the payroll website and see how much people make. Um, I put it again in the group chat. Next question is by Tamara H. Tamara asks, can we use money to lessen our gas tax? Electric vehicles can pay more through registration to make it equitable for use of our roads. Okay, so gas taxes are actually imposed by the state and the federal government, so there's not much like that the city can do about it. And the best thing that, of course, the city can do is having better, public transit options and making them more frequent and affordable. So that way, basically, it's more equitable for our roads. But yeah, unfortunately, like I said, yeah, the city doesn't do much about the gas tax. This next question is by Esteban. Esteban, you are here, so I see you. Thank you for coming. Esteban's question is, if you had control over $14 billion, if you had control of $14 billion in the city's general fund, how would you prioritize and allocate it to best serve the residents of LA? Well, the city's total budget is actually 14 billion, and the general fund is 8.2 billion. So his next question how would you, if the budget were reduced to 8 billion, what areas would you protect first? Housing, homelessness, public safety, infrastructure, or other priorities, and why? So one of the things that I like to do is ask people and many constituents to use our budget website, um, where you can actually create your own budget. So I'll share it in the in the chat, and like I always do, I will show you how to use it. That way you can advocate for the budget you all want. So let me share my screen. So here is the website that I just posted in the chat. It is create your own City of LA budget. And if you click on submissions, you could actually see, we've got a lot of submissions. You can see what the current city budget is right now, which is in green. You could see what people have submitted over time and seeing where they want their money to go. And you could see like where a lot of folks want to invest in, right, in their budget. So this is using this fiscal year's adopted operating budget of departments. So if you wanted to play with this, you could actually then submit this to your council member and say, hey, I want to give more money for, neighborhood empowerment, the neighborhood councils. Because right now, neighborhood councils only get $3 million, you know? Or like, hey, I want to give more money for the department on disability. I want to give them $27 million because right now they only get 5 million. Youth development. I want to give them $34 million on youth development because right now youth development only gets, it's so small, like it's not even showing you. But youth development gets 2 million. But play with this, and the way you do it is you click on create your city budget in the middle, and you could see what the current budget is up here, and then you could compare it with the one that you're gonna make right here. So this is yours, and essentially what you're doing is you can increase or decrease. So if you want more money for sanitation, you can increase that, right? If you wanted to have more money for rec and parks, you could put in more money by clicking on this a bunch of times. If you wanted to give more money to transportation, you could click on that, right? But the cool thing about this is that um, you have to find money to reduce elsewhere, right? And so you can find money to reduce, right? Say you want to have more or less money for general services or city attorney or that way you could get down to what the finite amount of money you have to spend. So, and then when you're done, you could actually submit this right here, and then it will get tallied up in the submissions page again. If you wanted more details on what goes into these budgets, like the different programs, you could actually click on detailed budget on the bottom, and it will actually show you the same thing, the adopted budget, the department's budget, operating budget. And here you can actually see what are the different programs in that department. So aging department, if you want more money for senior services, you could increase that, right? If you want more money for family caregivers, if you want more money for animal control, shelter operations, you know what I mean? And then, like I said, you could save it, you submit it, and then you could really show it. This is maybe very like very wonky, like budget wonky. And if you have the time to really like, if you wanted to learn more about the budget and how you can increase or decrease to get to somewhere, like this is something that you could play with. Like I think it's very awesome and very nerdy, but it's also a way to engage with your city. So, to answer your question, Esteban, I would see what the people like, right? And then obviously from there, seeing if it's a reality. Maybe it's not a reality, right? Maybe because if you were to increase or decrease, maybe you have to lay off a bunch of people, right? So maybe it's not a reality. But I know for sure I would increase the controller's budget because we need more accountants and auditors and and fraud, waste, abuse investigators, definitely. So yes, that is a one thing that we are hopefully gonna get. And if you are gonna participate in the budget, like we appreciate if you could advocate for us, if you give public comment to say to fund the controller's office. So just doing some self promotion right now. Okay, the next question is by Orchidia. What funds are set aside or are intended to be used for climate resilience, such as capital investments in heat wave preparedness and relief? So that is a great question. And if you want, I have another website for you all. Yeah, I just have a bunch of websites. So I put it in here. So this question is, around capital infrastructure, like projects. And so what I did was I reached out to all the departments to let us know, like, hey, like what are the capital projects you're working on? Mainly the public works, transportation, rec and parks, general services to know like what are the big projects that they're working on and what is their status. So I put it in the chat again, and and I will share my screen to show you all just how it looks. And you all could play with it again if you wanted to learn more about what are the capital projects. So I share my screen, and you could see I break it out by department, and some of these I got last updated like 4 months ago, so some of these need to be updated. But you could see when we first launched it, you could see how updated the date is, and if you were curious about like what is related to climate, like climate and other things too, um, you can actually like search, use the search, so like for example, here's $1 million to spend on transformative climate communities in South LA. So you could just see what we're working on. That's just one of the easy ways you could find out. If you go down, you could read more too. Like I said, for each different um, project, if you want to know like what relates to climate, you could literally type in the search box climate, and it says, look, they're making a walk and bike uh, Watts Transformative Climate Communities project. This project consists of installing traffic signals, left turn modifications, lead pedestrian crossing beacons in Council Districts 8 and 15. So yeah, there's a bunch of information on here that you all could read. This is provided by the departments, and it shows you some of the capital projects that the city or these departments are working on. So you could just be aware. So we'll probably update this in a month or so because we have a lot going on, especially with the budget. So play with this if you're curious about what capital infrastructure projects are being worked on. And then let me stop sharing. Okay. The next question is from Charles. Charles asked, is it in for Los Angeles? So Los Angeles instituted a mansion tax in 2022 with Measure ULA, and it taxes all real estate transfers of over 5 million to pay for, construction and building of affordable housing into homelessness, right? So eviction defense, uh, rental assistance for people who are at risk falling into homelessness, like seniors or a mansion tax. Your second question, is there a corporate billionaire tax on the horizon? So I think to your question, there is something coming on the ballot in June, I think in June, or I'm not sure. Maybe it's in November. But there is a overpaid CEO tax that they're trying to get on the ballot. And depending on how much the CEO makes compared to how much their workers make, there might be an additional business tax that might be imposed. So there is also on the opposite side, just be careful, but there is another ballot proposal to repeal the business tax. So if we lose the business tax, then we're gonna lose like around 800 million at least every year. So that'll be on the ballot, I think, the repeal of the business tax. So something to think about, and that money goes to the general fund. So there'd probably be a lot of cuts and possibly layoffs. And just to let you all know, like the city can't enact a like straight billionaire tax. That has to be done at the state level, which is, I believe, what they're trying to push for the ballot, a one-time tax on billionaires. So we'll see what happens there. Okay, this next question is by Loan asks what is the real city's financial status? Um, we cannot rehire vacant positions due to severe budget shortfalls. Uh, Employees also had to take unpaid days and furloughs to fund the budget shortage. And now the city has billions unspent. What is going on? So, thank you for the question. Yes, there's a lot going on in the city's finances, and I could show you all this website. I could show you how to track the city's general fund in real time. We update this on a monthly basis, so if you're curious on how we're doing on the general fund, I just shared it in the chat, and then I'll share my screen. So this will show you how much money we've collected in revenue for the general fund, and then how much we've spent in the general fund. So you can see for the general fund, it's 8.2 billion. This is what the city's trying to get to. Currently, through March, we've collected 5.3 billion. We're at about 65% of the budget. We're about 9 months done out of 12 months in the fiscal year. So although we're not at 75%, because that's where you should be, it's because some revenues come at different times. And so if you look at this website, you could see what the majority of the general fund revenue comes from. So property tax is the highest, followed by departmental receipts, and then business tax. This is what I was saying. If the city repeals the business tax, then that's 800 million. That is gonna present an issue. And then here on the bottom is the more of like a spreadsheet version. So you could see how much we've collected year to date for the past 2 fiscal years to just compare like where we're at and how much we were, compared year over year. And then you could also see how much we're at in terms of the budget. So I would say for business tax, we're doing really well. I don't know if you all know this, but in the past year, the Office of Finance has um, been more aggressive on tax collection. So if you're a business in the city of LA, if you're an independent contractor, you may have gotten a mail to say, hey, like we notice you file taxes with the state. And so did you file your taxes with the city? And if you didn't, you have to pay those back taxes. You might get a penalty. But you could really see that these tax collection efforts have really helped boost. Like, look at like we're almost at 100% of the original budget. We're at 819, and the budget for the year was 825, and we still have 3 months left, so we might surpass and beat the budget, which is good. But just showing that the tax collection efforts is really um, is having an effect, and also too maybe the economy didn't hit as badly as many of us thought, right? But yeah, also sales tax is also doing pretty well. It's above 75%. That's 78.6. The ones that are not doing that great are your transient occupancy tax. So this is your hotel tax. You could see that we're at about 72% of the budget. And we're sort of like at the same amount where we were last year at this time. Parking fines are also not doing as well. And so, it's a mixture of things, right? I would say also too, the utility users tax is doing really well revenue wise. I don't know if you all noticed, but if you live in the city of LA, your electricity bill may have gotten up from DWP, and some of that money actually goes to the city through the form of a electric users tax. So if you notice you're paying more for your electricity, well, you could see that it is having a huge positive effect for the city's revenues, right? So I just wanted to point that out there. But yeah, the economy is interesting because for some they're up, but for some, they're also down, right? As well. And there are still some other revenues that we are, we may not get. And so that might be a hit against the city's budget. But for this fiscal year, we're hoping that we hit the budget, like the 8.2 billion. It'll certainly be better than the last two fiscal years, where combined we were short on revenue by over 400 million. And we needed to find where the money to cover that gap, right? And so through the reserve fund or through getting money from other departments. On the expenditure side, you could click on this, you can see how much we spent so far. So you could see, like I said, same thing, which, where are we spending the most? General, police, fire, HR benefits, sanitation, liability claims. Um, and you can also see how much we're spending, like a spreadsheet table as well. That shows you the past two fiscal years and how much they spent as a percentage of that year's budget. If it's red, that means that they are over the 75% like progress mark 9 months into it. Ideally, you want to stay below 75% in terms of your spending, because if you're already on track to be over 75%, that means you're going to be over budget by the end of the year. So this is just another way to track spending. And one thing you all could do here too is you see here there's a hyperlink. You could actually click on it and it'll show you the breakdown of that department's accounts. So you could see here, let's see how much we've spent. So you could see how much we spent. You could see what account it belongs to. And then you can roll to the right and you can see how much we spent so far. So for example, in the city attorney's office, we've already spent 98% of our litigation budget, and there's still 3 months left. And you can just see how we did last year. So at this time, we were already 231%, 160% 2 years ago over at this time. But you could play with it. You could click on any department and see how much we're spending there. So to answer your question, I see on the revenue side where it's looking hopeful, but on the expenditure side, we are spending a lot, and the liability claims are a lot as well. We're projecting to possibly spend over $200 million this fiscal year on liabilities again. So that is also not good. But I would say play with this website because it shows you every month, what the latest is. So I posted it again in the chat. Put that there. So that okay. Let me answer the next question. The next question is by Gail R, and this relates to animal services. Thank you, Gail, for the question. So I don't think it's a question. It just says spay and neuter funding for LAAS. So the fund right now for spay and neuter, and I could show you if you all were curious about how much money a fund has, you can use this website here. I think it's hilarious how I have a website for everything. I have a website for it. Okay. So Gail was asking about spay and neuter for animals. So I just posted a link which lists all the city's funds. And if you're curious how much money is in this fund, like I said, most of the city's $14 billion budget is funded by the general fund. And then the other special fund has, you could actually go to this link and I'll share my screen again. So you could see, how much money there is. And if you wanted to talk to your council member or elected official or anyone and be like, hey, can we spend money here or can we not? You could totally do it. So I'll share my screen. I could show you how much money is in the animal sterilization fund. So if you go here and you type in animal sterilize, you don't even have to type in the full thing. How about animal? Wait, oh, let's see what it says. Animal. Okay, there it is. Sterilize. Huh. Okay, well, the animal sterilization fund is 842. It's fun 842. Okay, so it's this one. So you could see here that the current cash balance is close to $4 million. And if you look at this website, you could also hover over and you could see like who is the administering department. You can see it's animal services. You can see the last expense paid was 3 days ago. You could see what the purpose is. So the fund purpose is to provide assistance for pet sterilization for citizens who meet established eligibility requirements. So if you all don't know, the Animal Services Department gives out spay and neuter vouchers, whether it's free or discounted. And it also tells you like what you could spend it on. So you could see here how it works as well. You could see what the adopted budget was. You could see budget amendments for the fiscal year. And yeah, you could see how much we spent. But one thing that I was curious about spay neuter is I was looking at some invoices because the way it works is when this account is drawn down against, they are billed by animal like service providers like who do spay and neuter. So people will get like their vouchers from the animal services website and then they'll apply it and they use it at these, approved locations. And what I notice is that some of these invoices, like they average around like $160 per spay and neuter. Um, I think it was dogs. So if you wanted to fund spay and neuter, it's averaging like around there. Like on the latest invoice I saw, it's like $160 per animal. Um, you could then try to ask your elected officials to say, hey, can you fund more money into spay and neuter? Because that could help with the overcrowding crisis. And yeah, so let's just do some quick math. If like we funded $5 million worth of spay and neuter, and that's like $160 a cost, that would be like 31,000 animals right there, right? So it's a budget decision and a priority on how you want to spend that money. And like I said, we're gonna find out in 7 days what's gonna happen for the city's budget and what it is for spay and neuter and for everything else. Um, so thank you for that question, Gail, or just asking about it. Um, uh, Don made a comment on spay neuter saying, it might that cost too much. Um, from what I've seen from the private sector, like it's like $400. So 160, not that bad, I feel like. So what I've seen, yeah, it's like $400 to $500 in the private, like, private vets and whatnot. So but yeah, sometimes it can range from $40 to $50 to $200, but it averages around, like I said, 160. The next question, I got is from Chris H. Chris asks, has the city looked into generating revenue from enforcing existing short-term rental regulations and collecting fines, considering the top 100 owners of short-term rentals in Los Angeles are all corporations? Has the controller's office been tracking regulation evasion or recommending any action around enforcement? Seems like a very sizable chunk of revenue to give up, especially when it's just a matter of enforcing existing law. Great question. Short-term rentals, if you all know about them, like Airbnbs and things like that. So I would say, our office is actually very interested in this topic. And we are analyzing missed opportunities for revenue, especially from, the enforcement arm of whether these short-term regulations are being abided by or not. So we're actually in the process of doing some data gathering. So we will get back to you and keep you posted on how we're doing on the short-term rental side. Okay, so the next question is by Jeff. Jeff asks, my concerns are regarding sidewalk conditions and the need for funding to support the plum initiatives, planning land use initiatives. My city block has over 100 feet of missing sidewalk curbs, grass growing into the street, and significant tree overgrowth. These issues prevent wheelchair users, walkers, and strollers from passing safely. With the World Cup and Olympics approaching, addressing these safety and accessibility concerns is critical. These conditions are demonstrated throughout our HSD neighborhood. So thank you for sharing your concerns, and I think you share the concerns of a lot of people who are just sick and tired of our sidewalks and our streets and our trees not looking the best that it can be. Um, I totally agree with you that there is an issue with our infrastructure. And so, like I said, one of the things we've been advocating for since we've been into office is to create a capital infrastructure plan, a CIP. We're the only large city or the largest city that doesn't have a capital infrastructure plan. Like we don't have a vision for what we want the city to look like in terms of our like outside environment. And our infrastructure plans right now are just like a hodgepodge of hundreds of capital projects, like I put on the dashboard. And it's like, hey, we're going to work on this one. Oh, hey, we're going to work on this one. And it's not the most efficient or effective. It's like, it also depends which, elected official yells the most, right? Or like gets the most attention, because then you might be able to get a department to fix your sidewalk faster if you lobby your elected official to do it the most. So it's very difficult, especially when you're a department and you have to answer to 16 bosses, right? The mayor and 15 council members. So the capital infrastructure plan to streamline requests and to tackle, what we want the city to be is a way to do it. But I would say, yeah, there is a huge backlog of fixing things like sidewalks. Like there's over 4,000 requests still to fix sidewalks, and there's really not much money to fix the sidewalks, um, to be honest. And also we need to build more curb ramps, right? But we're only doing like a few like each month, maybe like a few tens, maybe 30, 40 curb ramps. And you could actually also not only use our capital projects dashboard to know what we're working on for the capital project, but you could also look at our LA City metrics website, which posts department metrics to see what exactly, like how much they're completing or what they're doing each month. So let me share with you all this. So I put it in the website, put the website in the chat, and I'll share it with you all real quickly. And you can basically, like I said, let's go through this. You guys are all curious on some statistics. So if you open the app and you click on performance metrics here, you could actually filter by department you were curious about for their performance metrics. So we asked departments to provide it to us. So, some departments provide more, some provide less. And we try to get them to provide us as much as they can because there's a lot of money. But, we're working on trying to get more metrics. But here's an example, right? Transportation. If you look here, you could see some metrics on every month, like how much they have issued bus lane citations. Let's do how many crosswalks installed, right? Because people want crosswalks because they don't want to get hit by a car. You could see how much we build, install crosswalks. We average about like high 20s a month, right? And obviously, there are so many crosswalks that need to be installed and fixed and repaired. Um, you mentioned curb ramps for accessibility. So you could go to street services and you could see how many curb ramps that they built. So you can actually see that there's a backlog for access ramps. It's about 30,000. 30,000. So sad. Um, you actually see how many potholes have been repaired. How many miles have been swept. Let's go to your specific one about how many curb ramps are installed. Let's find it. Curb ramps. Okay, so how many ADA access ramps have been installed? So as you can see here, it's averaging about 30 a month. And as you saw, there's a backlog of 30,000 to complete. So at this rate, almost seems impossible, but it's a budget decision, right? And political will. So that's why you all need to get involved and tell everyone where you want your money to be spent. Because this is what they're able to do right now with the budget that they do have. So that's why I'm sharing with you guys all these websites so you can make use of this information when you lobby your elected officials on where you want your money to be spent. So hope you all use that metrics website, and I will share it again in here just so you all could play with it. Okay, let's go to the next question. Marcelo asks, what is your take on budgeting for the 2028 Olympics? How would a biannual budget process affect preparation for the games? Okay, thank you for the question. Does everyone know that the Olympics is coming to Los Angeles in 2 years? Yes, I'm assuming you all do. Um, the budget for the Olympics is a little over $7 billion. And if the LA 28 goes over that amount, then the city is on the hook, and also California state taxpayers. But hey, we're California too, so LA, you all are going to be footing the bill. And so we are right now really trying to, so to answer your question, like, what is your take on budgeting for the 2020 Olympics Games? Well, first of all, the city's budget right now should be like, zero, right? If there are excess costs, we're gonna go over budget. We need a guarantee that LA 28 is gonna be footing. But there are agreements that haven't been signed yet, and this was actually done many years ago before we took office. So we took office December 2022, but it was like around 2017 when all the cities around the world were bidding for the Olympics. And Los Angeles in 2017, they bid for it. And I think back then, there was an agreement where the past council members and the mayor at the time were basically going to cover the shortfall. So we sort of trapped ourselves in here a little bit, and uh, that's why we're liable for all the cost overruns. But definitely not a good decision. Um, right now, we are trying to actually track Olympic spending. So one of the things that we're doing in my office is similar to how we're tracking homelessness spending. We're going to send out a memo to all the department heads and to the general managers and to the departmental chief accountants to start tracking their Olympic spending, because we need to know how much we're spending on the Olympics going into it. So you all should be aware too on what the city's spending for the Olympics. But yeah, that's something that we're looking into and worried about as well. Another question is from Cheryl. Cheryl asks, is the city's budget sustainable for next fiscal year without layoffs? That is a good question. I'm hoping that there are no layoffs. Unfortunately, there were a lot of threats for layoffs, right? And there's still some positions that the city's trying to that they eliminated that are filled right now that they're trying to find positions for, so people don't get laid off at the end of the in the next 2 months. So, as I showed you all about the current financial status on the revenue side, it's looking all right. If expenditures though and liabilities keep growing, then yes, there is a risk. There's always a risk. And there are some increased costs too already that that we have to be aware of, such as there are some waivers, Palisades waivers, that we're covering for the fire, so people can rebuild their homes, right? But it comes at a cost, right? So there are some waivers that is an additional. Um, there's also the city approved more police officer hiring above than what was approved. So that's another area too that the city has to budget more for. Um, in a few years, there's also the convention center that we have to find like over $150 million additional when we start paying. So there are. I would just say this: if expenditures keep growing at the rate higher than the revenue growth is, then yeah, we'll be in trouble, right? And we're gonna have to find a way to cover that. And unfortunately, the way the city has been covering financial issues is by cutting departments' budgets, laying off people, doing furloughs. Not sustainable. Like it's really not sustainable, and it's very like amateurish, right? And you know, I c- like I came from the private sector, and I never seen like if this was a business, like it'd be terrible, right? Financially, right? But the sad thing is it's like we always have money because it's your taxpayer dollars that are replenishing like this. So it's like, oh yeah, we got more taxpayer money. Let's just keep spending it. And then if if we go over, we could just cut from a department or lay off people, right? And which is totally not sustainable. So um Cheryl, to answer your question, we'll find out. We'll find out very soon in a week or so, based on the budget to see what's being proposed. And hopefully the revenues growth is large enough to cover all the increased cost of living adjustments, all the, every year people get a pay increase, right? Making sure it's enough. And also making sure that the liabilities go down. So we'll keep you posted. Next question is from Nacho. Nacho asks, how much of the spend is going to fund encampments? Can funds be held for vendors that encourage and promote encampments? So so the city doesn't necessarily like fund encampments directly, like homeless encampments. The funds are allocated to a homelessness budget, which then gets, you know, uh divvied out to LAHSA, the Los Angeles Homeless Service Authority. And then they are the ones who use those funds to disseminate to their service providers who, then go and do outreach to the encampments. Also, there's also money to be spent for interim housing, right? Like shelters, also permanent housing, things like that. But yeah, and you could, like I said, you could use our homelessness dashboard to find out some more information on how much we spend, right, for hotels, motels, how much we pay LAHSA. That way you can get a better sense on how much of the funding is getting spent for that. Okay, next question is from Conrad. What's a practical way to ensure the city doesn't keep slashing neighborhood council budgets to fill much bigger holes created by other departments? Great question. Yeah, I mean, as I told you all literally like 2 minutes ago, when there is a budget hole, they look to other departments to cut. One of those is being the neighborhood councils, like the department, sadly, right? And so to answer your question, what's a practical way to ensure the city doesn't keep slashing it? Well, it's holding departments accountable, like who go over budget. I think that's like the biggest thing. Um, my office gives recommendations, and we always ask for more transparency and oversight on staying within budget. But honestly, like it's gonna require more teeth from, um, the other elected officials as well. Also, it's gonna require handling the liability issue. So when you combine the liabilities and then you combine the overspending, like that's just a disaster waiting to happen, right? So you could either cover the overspending and the liabilities by performing well in your revenue, which is what we hope to cover that, but it's not always the case. Um, and then what ends up happening too is if you have no revenue, then that's when you take from the city's reserve fund or you take from other departments, which is what your question said, right? Like you take it from the neighborhood council budget, right? I think you guys got your budget reduced for your neighborhood councils to spend each year. So, the city has a um spending and liability issue. And that's why we're actually auditing. Like I said, we're doing the audit right now on liability claims and risk management to see like what is the city doing or not doing. And then when it comes to the departmental overspending, like we need to be more on top of it. Because right now it's just like departments overspend and it's everyone just says, okay, I guess we overspend and we just have to adjust the department's budget in the middle of the fiscal year through what we call an FSR, and we just increase their budget, and we don't really address the overspending, right? So it's very weird. But that's how you would do it. Is we either grow more money, revenue, and like I said, there are going to be two taxes that you all are going to be voting on June: the unlicensed cannabis business tax, and also an increase in the hotel TOT tax. Um, So that's one way, or you get money from somewhere else, right? Or you just don't overspend and you don't commit liabilities, right? That's how you protect the neighborhood council budget. Let's go to the next question. All right, the next question is, um, this is from Tony. Tony asked, is Insight Safe still funded? Is Insight Safe still funded? How has the new county homeless agency affected encampment reductions? Thank you for your question. So if you are not aware, Insight Safe is the mayor's um, homelessness signature program, which focuses on getting people off the street immediately, putting them into motels, hotels. So to answer your question, yes, the Insight Safe is still funded. It is still funded, and it looks like there might be cuts though to it next fiscal year because maybe 10 to 15%. So we'll see what happens. And the new county homeless agency, the new department, is just getting started off the ground. And we'll have to wait and see to see, you know, how they're doing compared to using LASA, right? I think that's where a lot of governments, county government or local governments are deciding, like, do we pull 300 million away? Or do we keep our 300 million, right? So time will tell to see how the county's doing on solving homelessness. Um, versus using LASA, which is what we all used to use, and we still do use in the city. So we'll find out on the county level. Okay. Vanessa asks, how do we increase spay and neuter vouchers? How do we use the unused funds for animal services, which doesn't get funded as often? So, like I said, the animal sterilization fund is the main fund that is used to provide pet sterilization. And as you saw through the All City Funds website cash balance, there's about like 4 million there, which is honestly not a lot. And a key funding source for the sterilization fund is like dog licenses. So if there were more dogs getting licensed, and then that means there could be more funding. to support spay and neuter. In addition to, like I said, the city can also make it a political decision or a political will to fund more spay and neuter, right? Like they could just give more money from the general fund to fund more spay and neuter. So like that's why the budget process, when it drops next Monday, like tell your council member, like you want more money for spay and neuter. And my office has advocated for, spay and neuter. I think it's you want to get things at the root cause. But it's really it has to be a priority amongst other elected officials, right? So there's over 40 departments, and animal services is just one. So I'd say reach out to the budget and finance committee members and see if there can be ways to fund it more. I got another question about animal services. Let me give me 1 second. I had a follow-up question asking me about our LA Animal Services audit. So right now, our office is currently auditing LA Animal Services. We are auditing more so at the animal shelter level, see if we're, providing sufficient care and whatnot. We started last year. So we're actually finishing up the first part of a two-part audit. And so the first part is our auditors. We've gone in, we're seeing, if shelter care is sufficient, if we're doing our best to generate revenue, to fund the department sufficiently, things like that. So we're going to have those results coming soon. The second part of the audit is we actually have a consultant who is an expert in animal care and veterinary care. Because like my office, we're accountants and auditors, right? Like we're not like animal. So we actually have consultants who have been visiting the shelters. So they're doing their evaluation as well. And so then once we have those, we'll release that. And so that's the status. We hope to release part one, hopefully soon, and then part two once our consultant is finished with that. So we'll keep you all posted. And I'll be honest, like in terms of audits, I wish I could do more audits. But like I said, I only have 7 auditors, right? I don't have a lot of auditors, and that's a budget decision, right? By the elected officials, the other elected officials. If they want to give me more auditors, like I could do more. But because I only have 7, I can only do like 2 or 3 a year because an audit consists of 2 to 3 people and it takes up to a year to complete. So if I only have 7 people, then I'm only pumping out 2 to 3 audits a year, right? Like that's just how it is. Uh, and my audit and fraud investigation budget has been cut so much. So, but we're still doing a good job. We're doing the best we can, right? So, I would love, like I said, if you all to advocate for more auditors and fraud investigators. uh, the next question is from Lionel. Hey, Lionel. Lionel's here today. Lionel says, will the city council consider using the funds in the idle funds report for city services and saving city jobs? That's a great question, Lionel. If you all are aware or not aware, last week we just released a report that showed that there's about $80 million like 170 special funds. And this money could be used for whatever that purpose was. And so what we're doing right now is we're trying to get the city and the departments to use that money. Actually, and to answer your question, Lionel, there are some council districts who are doing their best to use those idle funds. I know in Council District 6, they're trying to use some funds in Panorama City to use some of those idle funds to beef up, street safety, like adding speed bumps and speed humps. So shout out to CD6 for using our report to do that. In addition, we also have been able to transfer nearly $2 million from these unused special funds to the general fund to replenish it because the general fund is the one that's not doing as great. And we're also going to get another that helps, right? Like that helps. Like maybe you guys could say, hey, this money that the controller finds, the general fund, maybe put that in spay and neuter, or hey, put that in a controller's audit budget, or hey, so this is just so many ways my office is trying to help the city. But what we've seen though is like some of these special funds, the reason why it's not getting spent is because these are like old funds that came into existence like 20 years ago. And departments are not focused on using something from 20 years ago, right? Like they're focusing on the newest grant they got yesterday, right? That's like $1 billion. And then when they see like a small fund that has 300 grand, it's like, well, 300 grand compared to $1 billion, like I'm gonna spend the $1 billion. And that's why these idle funds they grow and the balance grows. But we're doing our best to try to get these idle funds used because they can be used. And there are council districts, like I said, CD6, who are trying to convert these funds to use for the district to make their district better. So we'll keep you posted. And Lionel too, if you want to, ask your council members and um, you know, say like, hey, like maybe you could look at the controller's report and see how much money in your district is unspent and could we use that? So I'll actually post that report for you all because it's $80 million and you all could take a look to see if it touches on categories you all like, and you all can, you know, tell your other elected officials to say, use the controller's report to spend that money. I just posted it in the chat box. Okay. All right. 30 more minutes. Let's do this. Okay. Okay. We are down here. Question by Frank. How much money has been spent to combat homelessness? What is the plan and what are the results? Great question. And, as I don't know if you all saw, but 2 weeks ago, we just released the report on how much money was budgeted for homelessness and how much was spent in fiscal year 2025. You click on it, I'll share my screen. So to answer your question on how much money was spent, how much was budgeted, let me share with you the website. So if you look at here, there was about close to 473 million or half a billion that was unspent. The city though budgets nearly like $1 billion for homelessness. But what we've seen consistently the past 2 years is that the city doesn't spend anywhere near $1 billion. That's one thing that like I have to clarify a lot to people because they say, don't we spend $1 billion like every year on homelessness? And the answer is no. We've only spent about half of it. And and if you scroll down, you could see like our recommendations on how to budget better, how to use it better. And you could see like what was spent and unspent. Like, for example, in the homelessness budget, there's $83,000 for animal services to use for homelessness related efforts and outreach to help those who are experiencing homelessness. But the department did not spend it at all. Like they spent 3,000. But this was for a homelessness liaison to help out with people experiencing homelessness with pets. And that is just like a situation in which like, hey, maybe we could have used that money to help people. And so, a lot of this is being on top of departments to spend their dollars efficiently in a timely manner. That way, it could be used for good things. But, I shared with you all the website. You could see how much was the budget, how much was expensed, how much was encumbered, and how much remained uncommitted at the end of the day. So play with it. And like I said, the other way to see our homelessness spending in real time is you could use our homelessness spending tracker that we built for you all that I posted earlier. And I will share it again just so you all could see it. But this tracks homelessness spending in real time. And yeah, let me just share it here again just so you all are aware. Okay. So thank you for your question on homelessness spending. And the dashboard also includes like some of the performance metrics, Frank, if you want to know like what are the results, things like that. So use the metrics as well to see how it is. Um, Next question is uh, from Stacy. A significant a significant amount of large cities are facing structural budget deficits, including cities that have implemented a 2-year budget cycle. How can the city of LA make structural fiscal changes to ensure it can weather not only short-term, but long-term fiscal changes that will happen as the city's population ages, immigration policies decrease the workforce availability, and AI technology is opportunities for the next generation? Okay. The city is facing several structural crises, including the one, including the ones you mentioned, as well as like the decline in jobs and entertainment, right? Which has been a huge part of the local economy. And the best way the city can address these challenges is by looking for, like I said earlier, ways to increase our tax base, our revenues, but not just increasing sales tax, right? Like don't just increase taxes, but finding ways um, that don't affect Angelinos. Like I said, there are some things, right? Like there's a lot of vacant properties that are just sitting there. There's ways you can make money off those by getting them to use it. Those vacant lots, units. In addition, like all the little robots that are like driving on our sidewalk and our street, right? Right now, they're not like paying any fees right now. And that's another way too that other cities have found ways to generate revenue. In addition, if we have more housing, that's also another way too as well. Of course, we want to make sure there's no displacement, but those are just ways to increase revenues. Because like I said, costs are only increasing in the city, and it keeps getting higher and higher. So the city needs to find money to cover those costs, right? Or we find uh, ways to not spend so much, right? And I think we have to figure out like control our overspending and the amount of liabilities. I think that's like a huge way. Um, and like I said, we just can't keep taxing our way out of stuff, especially like on sales tax. Like what do we pay? Like 9.75, right? Um, there has to be other ways to do it. So that is another way. The next question is um Linda. Okay. The next question is from Linda. She asks, what is our city emergency funding? Also, what is the homeless expenditures using I put it in the chat, like ways to track, like what are we spending on for homelessness? So I'll put that in again so you guys could find out what we're spending on homelessness in real time. And I'll put that there and you could play with the different tabs. And when it comes to your other question about how much is the city spending on emergency efforts, things like that. Um, Share something real quick. How much we're spending on emergency related funding. And let me see if I can pull it. Okay. Okay, so the city has a discretionary budget. And in there, they break out the categories for how much we spend on emergency management because those funds could be used on whatever they want. So let me share my screen. So you could see how much the city has spends in their discretionary budget. And I show you this because it includes how much they want us fund on emergency management. So you could see here that it's about 240 million related across the board. The emergency management department is only like $7 million, but all the other spending that's going towards emergency management, it goes up to 240 million. So that's how much is being funded to spend. And this 6.6 billion, represents the amount of the 14 billion, like I was showing you earlier, that is unrestricted, so you could spend it on whatever you want. And yeah, so that is how much we're spending on emergency. And then for homelessness spending, like I said, check out the website. I'll show you how much we're spending. And like I mentioned 5 minutes ago, we don't spend nearly as much as we budget for homelessness. So let me stop sharing there. Okay, the next question is, from Bayan. Okay, Bayan asked this question. How do we keep the controller's office well-funded and independent? How do we keep it safe from being defunded or abolished? Great question. Right now, the city is undergoing charter reform, and we are asking for an independent budget. So if you could ask your city council members to give us an independent budget, we only want 0.42% of the budget, and it would help us a lot. Like 0.42% of the general fund is nothing. So if you can ask folks to give us a budget, I'll put a website here which talks about our charter reform recommendations. The commission's pretty much done. Now it's in the city council's hands to determine what charter reform they want. And if we want this controller to have an independent budget, you have to do it through the city council right now. So thank you for that question and wanting to help us. Okay, the next question here is Servant ask, your April 26th report identified millions in idle special funds. Why have these funds remained unspent for so long? Was the legal process for repurposing these restricted funds to cover general fund shortages like homelessness and community safety? Yeah, great question. You know, like I said earlier when this question was asked, there's many reasons why these funds will get spent for a variety of reasons. Lack of staff to put this money to use, lack of capacity, like I said, priorities are also changing a lot as well. These special funds could be like a grant, right? And maybe they came from like 30 years ago. And so they're not focused on spending the remaining money from something that was there, been around for like 20, 30 years, and it's only like $100,000. Obviously, like 100,000 is a lot to the people and we should use it. But the city is so short staffed on implementing a lot of these special funds that they're focusing like on the new stuff, like the new funds. And so, my office is doing our best to actually repurpose these funds to be replenishing the general fund. A lot of these special funds do have strings attached. And the best thing that we should do is repurpose them to be used for the expenditure plan, like that originally was part of the special funds purpose, right? So one thing that I found is that there's actually $1 million for animal services, but it can only be used for a specific purpose, and it can only be used for construction or related, construction related capital projects at the animal shelters. And if you've been to our animal shelters, $1 million could do a good lot of stuff for our animal shelters in terms of the infrastructure, right? Like you can't spend it on spay and neuter, but you could spend it on like the shelter, like the capital, the infrastructure of the shelter. So that's why I put the link in the in the chat. Like see what funds there are. Like we list them out. We tell people like what category it belongs to and reach out to your elected officials, like your council member, to repurpose these monies or create an expenditure plan to use it. Because yeah, it's just sitting there. But like I said, there's a lot of short staffing and priorities that are like competing against one another. So it's very, very, very difficult for getting the city to spend these idle funds. Okay, the next question is from Chiquita. With LASA no longer with the Los Angeles Assistance Homeless Service Authority no longer the lead agency for LA, Homeless services. What does the coming budget look like for housing assistance and homeless assistance for LA County? So the city is still using LAHSA, and the county is doing their own thing with their own department. So I'm not sure what the county is doing at a more detailed level, but I know the city is still using LAHSA, especially to provide the services, especially at our shelters and interim housing locations. Um, Next question is from Candace. How do we keep the police from bankrupting the city? I think just making sure that we don't go over budget. The liability claims are, there's accountability and preventative measures to make sure that, we're reducing harm, right? And liability costs. In addition, it's also like political will, right? Like what is the city gonna do to hold departments accountable? And I think that's some of the things that you have to talk to your elected officials on political will, right? There is some charter reform happening right now where it's being debated if the city council can have a say in terms of policy decisions in the department. And so that's being debated right now. But yeah, it's a lot of political will to see what happens with that. Okay, next question is from Alicia. I just like an update on the status of the budget and if departments that provide services to historically marginalized groups will be impacted by cuts. A great question, Alicia. I mean, definitely. There's a lot of departments who got cut that deal with, or provide services to historically marginalized groups, youth development, um, aging, uh, disability, neighborhood empowerment, a lot of the smaller departments, but hopefully next fiscal year, and we'll find out next week what the budgets are for these departments, right? In addition, civil rights is also another department as well that had their budget cut. So that's something that is helps with providing services. Um, but we'll find out in a week on what's going to happen to these departments. So we'll let you know. Okay, the next question is next question is from Lisa. How many empty houses and buildings does the city of LA have? Can we get something on the ballot or have an ordinance to make it so landlords can't say that they are demolishing a home or building and letting it languish and get caught on fire? All demo permits should sell their buildings or homes for $1 for a year before demo. Thank you for your question, Lisa. We don't know how many empty houses and buildings there are in the city of LA. I think there was like a study by the housing department, like maybe 5, 6 years ago. It was like over 100,000 units that were vacant. But I'm not sure about the buildings and properties, commercial properties, how many are vacant either. But I will say there are some cities who did pass a vacancy tax, and it resulted in 15% of unoccupied housing coming back on the market. So, that's interesting. And in LA, that would mean like 14,000 available units, and up to 100 million in revenue. So that's something that the city's actually exploring about using and putting these vacant units and properties to use. Next question is from Daniel. How can we rein in on police spending and lawsuits? Yeah, like I said to the other constituents, it's going to require a lot of political will and oversight when the police go over budget and the lawsuits that occur, right? Right now, it's very difficult to get, accountability, and it just feels like it just things that always happen and not much changes, right? And so we're gonna see. I mean, obviously, we're gonna keep providing the transparency and telling what's happening with all these lawsuits and how much we're going over budget by and what's it doing to the other city funding for other departments. But yeah, it's going to take political will, honestly, from other elected officials as well, because it is unsustainable financially, right? Like with all these lawsuits and just going over budget, right? So you either have to like I said, raise revenue to cover all this overspending and lawsuits, which may mean more taxes for you all, maybe, or you need to cut elsewhere, which is what the city does too. Okay, the next question is from Stephanie. Want to know the city will invest in hygiene and new housing for homelessness. You know, there there are actually a decrease, I think, in hygiene related efforts like showers this fiscal year because of the budget cuts, sanitation, unfortunately, sadly. But the city is, still working on housing, right? Obviously. But I don't know the exact amount. But we do have, like I said, our homelessness website that shows how much we spent last fiscal year. So I will post that again if you wanted to see some of that spending last fiscal year. All right. All right. Next question. Next question. What can we focus on in the next week as a constituent? And this is from Sandra. Sandra says after the, okay. So basically, when the budget comes out on Monday, next Monday, you should focus on talking to your council members and especially to the Budget and Finance Committee members, because they're going to be the ones who are amending the budget, the mayor's budget, and let them know where you want your money to be spent. So I'd be like organizing your neighbors and your community and showing up, right? Like bring your kids and have them advocate for better resources for rec and parks and for green spaces and for more youth development, but the best pressure is people pressure. So, and the more you are, the the more powerful your message is, right? Especially if it's like genuine and um you're really pleading to like have a better city. Like yeah, I would say email your council members, show up to their events, show up to the budget hearing. Mind you, it will be very long, but like try to get to them, A lot of them have events and try to let them know where you want your money to be spent. Okay. Let's see here. Here is the next question from Reba. Do you start from zero assumptions and require city agencies to present a requested budget with justifications? Or do you use last year's budget figures and adjust them up or down? Are agencies penalized if they do not use up their entire budget? Great question. So the city, unfortunately, just goes up or down, and they use the last year's budget as a way to baseline what it's going to be next year, right? And I think that is not good. I think the city should figure out what they want out of their departments and then fund towards that. This is also one of the reasons why we've been advocating for a 2-year budget. That way there's more time to examine like what departments are actually doing and understanding the results that they get from the budget that they have. So also departments aren't punished for not using their entire budget. Um, and they're not punished for going over budget. Like it's just how it is, right? It's just we just keep spending more and more, right? And there's no controls, unfortunately, right? Anytime a department goes over budget, we just move money during the middle of the fiscal year to increase their budget. So now they have a bigger budget. Um, but generally, if there's some unspent money into these departments and they're from the general fund, they'll get swept back into the reserve fund. So we'll see what happens there. Okay. Jeff asked, does the city have a plan to reduce legal liabilities? And are you seeing it? Okay. Thank you for this question. I think it's been asked before, but the city has proposed some plans to reduce liabilities. But so far, obviously it's not working as great because we're still spending over 200 million a year. And like I said, the biggest problem is there's very little accountability um, in the city for liabilities. Like that's why we're auditing City Hall, like I said, to know like what is the city doing to reduce harm and liabilities, and we'll find out. So we'll let you know where that goes. But as of right now, like it's hard for me to see what is the city doing to reduce liabilities because honestly, like nothing's happening. Um, and it's sad because every liability, like I said, it comes out of the general fund, which means less money to spend for other things. Okay, the next question is uh, from Lynn. Can you comment on the status of the charter form issue to make the city's budget a 2-year budget instead of every year? So this was one of our recommendations, and the Charter Reform Commission actually approved it. So that's awesome. Um, we would adjust it slightly, but first the charter reform approach would basically have the city doing our operating budget and capital budget at the same time. And our office thinks it's better to alternate those two budgets, like the capital budget and the operating budget, and doing the operating budget 1 year, then the capital budget the next, so that the city could spend more time to dig deeper into each. And we also think the city should use the 2-year budget timeline to build in more community feedback at the beginning of the process, especially when the city is creating its priorities instead of having, feedback all at the end when 99% of the decisions have already been made, which is what you'll probably see next week and over the next 40 days, sadly. Um, so yeah. Mustafa asks, how is taxpayer money collected from their paycheck and how does it flow through the government to various agencies? What systems are used and who manages them? Uh, so, I mean, not necessarily it comes out of Angelino's paychecks like you guys is directly like at your job, right? Like there is no payroll local tax like when you get paid every 2 weeks, right? It's like when you spend your money at a restaurant, you pay sales tax, which then goes to us. Or if you own a house, then you pay your property tax. Then that goes to us, right? So it's not necessarily, money coming out from your biweekly paycheck. It's what you spend on a business or when you pay sales tax or when you stay at a hotel in the city, right? That's what flows through us. And the way the general fund is funded is it goes all to the general fund. And like I said, most of the general fund, you could find out like what we spend most of it on by using, our website here. You could get a better sense of what we're spending our general fund dollars on. So I'll share my screen again just so you could understand where some of that money is going. Um, so you could see it here. So if you scroll down, you can see click on expenditures. You can scroll down. You can see where we're spending on. So general, this also includes pensions too. So this is also distributed amongst different departments as well. But you can see police, fire, HR benefits, and HR benefits is distributed amongst different departments as well. So that's sort of the makeup on how our tax dollars are spent when the money goes into the general fund. So I'll do one more question and then yeah, answered a lot. Um, this is from Daniel. Daniel asks, what are the fund financing sources of the City of LA's annual budget? Yeah, great question. I put the website in the thing and I'll share my screen again. So if you wanted to know what the revenue sources are, you could see what the main revenue sources are for the general fund. So you could see here, most of it is property taxes and departmental receipts, and then business tax, then utility users tax, which is like your gas tax, electric users tax, and sales tax. But you could go down here, and these are the different revenue sources that the city collects from you all or from businesses. So you could see where all the money comes from. Then if you want to know what the city spends on at a high level, you could click on expenditures, and you can see where all the city spends their money on here. All right, everyone. Thank you all so much. It has been a long 2 hours. Like my throat is like dry. But I appreciate you all. Sorry if I couldn't get to your question. There's a lot of questions asked. But yeah, we'll do another one. Hopefully, once the budget drops, I could show you all what the mayor's budget priorities are, and I could show you where the money is being budgeted. And like I said, get involved now. Reach out to your council members and tell them where you want your money to be spent. So I just want to say thank you to everyone for joining, and we'll talk to you all later. So thank you.